Garth, it's really good to be here this morning, and I wanted to tell you first off that I share with you a background in Illinois. I have roots in Illinois, and I know you do, and I'd like you to talk about your roots and how much they mean to you as mine do to me.
Well, I was born and raised on a farm in west central Illinois, a small mixed crop livestock farm near the towns of sort of between Kewanee and Galesburg, if you know where that is.
Vaguely.
And that's where I grew up and attended schools and so forth. And I think that undoubtedly that experience of being a farm kid, and particularly at a time in our history when there were very few agricultural chemicals used by anybody, probably has affected my feelings about agriculture and the way we ought to go about farming and so on. I always have to quickly point out that we're not advocating going back in a literal sense to the way we farmed in the 1940s, but some of the principles that we followed I think are very important, and as many others do around the country, of crop rotation and so on, and cultural practices for the control of pests and weeds and that kind of thing. So those early days undoubtedly were very important in shaping my view of agriculture.
Did you raise both crops and have livestock?
Yes, we had what would be called a mixed crop livestock farm. We grew corn and soybeans primarily, but with an alfalfa or some other clover legume in the rotation, and had a few hogs and a few chickens and pigs and the usual array of farm animals, including dogs and cats and rabbits, which I grew, and so on. So it was a typical farm of the 40s and 50s in the Midwest, as most of them were at that time, run in that sort of a mode where you milked a few cows and marketed products from a variety of sources.
Did your father begin using chemicals and fertilizers?
Actually, we never really did. We left the farm in about 1950, I guess, because of my father's illness. But no, we didn't. And I think in general, in that part of Illinois at least, farmers generally did not start to use chemicals in a fairly serious way until the 60s. I think we often forget that this so-called revolution in chemical agriculture really is not that old. People talk about it beginning with the post-World War II era, and that's true, but in terms of wide-scale and fairly heavy use of these materials, it was really a product of the 60s and even on into the 70s, I think, before we seemed to adopt a rather firm policy of favoring monocultures, in that the enormous movement toward concentration and specialization, vertical integration and so on began.